Arnold Roth, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so very much for making time for me. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so sorry for the circumstances under which we talk. I wish I'd met you in a completely different way. I'll get you to tell your story in a second, but for starters, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
You lost a little girl a few years ago to Hamas. You've now lost a son in law to the exact same terror group. I'd love you to tell me, first of all, about your daughter Malki and how she died.
Malki was born in Melbourne and was 15 years old, vivacious and full of empathy and love for people, very much involved in helping. On a school holiday Thursday afternoon, fiercely hot, summer here is in July and August, she and her best friend decorated the bedroom of a mutual friend who was coming back from summer holidays that day, and were then going to make their way to the other side of Jerusalem where we live in order to get together with a group of other camp counsellors who were going to be meeting and planning for a camp that was starting a few days afterwards. They stopped off in the centre of town, the very centre of town, a pizzeria of the American chain called Sbarro, and they were standing at the counter when a young man with a guitar case stepped up behind them, and they didn't really see him. Had they seen him, I think my very musical daughter would have thought to herself, a fellow musician, but she didn't, and he pulled the trigger, and the entire pizzeria went up, and many people were killed. 16 were killed on the spot, or 15 was killed on the spot. Another woman with a little child was left brain damaged and died more than 20 years later, having never regained consciousness, and about 130 people were injured. In some ways, it was a turning point for Israel as well, because it was the first time in that so-called intifada, the second intifada, where a human bomb walked into premises that he would not be expected to be in. There were no security people, no guards, no one really watchful, but everything changed from that day forward.
I can't imagine you ever fully recover from that. In fact, I know that you would never fully recover from that. But how do you, as a father, reach a stage where you can just function? And I'm assuming it's because of other children that you have that need you, but I don't know.
Well, it's a pretty astute comment. The family that my wife and I have had the blessing to produce consists of 7 children. Malki was the middle child, coming after 3 boys and before 3 girls. Um, Life did not go back to normal like an elastic band. It took a long time, and everybody in the family, I'm only speaking about the family, got back to a normal life at their own pace. And in some cases it was years, and in some cases it was weeks. I can't, and I won't, try to replicate what that experience is like, because of all the various things that you can say about it, you need to know that it's intensely personal and affected very much by what each person brings into that very, very, very challenging moment and what they take out of it. I can say that one of the key things for us as a family was that, thank God, we were, and we still are, tight-knit. We lean on each other, and we love each other. That goes without saying, although perhaps it needs to be said. And we know how to support each other. And that, as it turns out, has become a very meaningful skill set in view of what happened just before and just after. So we've not gone through an easy time, but we're very close physically. We have a number of our children living here on the same street that we do, so that on the Sabbath, when we don't travel by car, we spend a lot of time with our grandchildren, and I can tell you that that is really exactly where we want to be. So good things that come from being a tight family, and a lot of very bad things that come from losing a very loved child to an act of pure, unadulterated hatred.
It's incredible. I'm constantly blown away by the lack of hate that you seem to have in your heart. And I'm sure it is there, or I'm sure it was there, or I'm sure I don't know how you handle that, because it's deserved, but the love seems to just override all other emotions when it comes to Jewish and Israeli people, from my perspective.
The only thing that I'd argue with you about is that you didn't mention anger.
Yeah.
And I'm crippled by anger. I'm enraged by stupidity that I see around me taking different forms. Hatred is less of an issue. I can only say that it's probably there, but it's tucked away hard. But the love of my wife and of me, for each other and for our children, for our grandchildren, and for the community in which we live, those are tangible things, and they are empowering. So thank God we've been in a position where we've been able to, a certain extent, re-engineer the very fierce feelings that came over us at the time that Malki's life just ended so horrifically and so abruptly, and turned it into supporting each other. And also at a different level, let me say, that we also started a charity almost immediately, which is a very Jewish thing to do, I should say, turning real serious misfortune into something that consciously is done so that you can bring good into the world. There's a Hebrew name for it, which is chesed. It's not like charity where you give money. It's like something you do with your body, with your actions. And speaking now almost 23 years after Malki's murder, the charity that bears her name brings a great deal of comfort to the family, and certainly to me.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for everything you do in that space. It is incredible. I struggle to understand sometimes how people can give so much when they've had so much taken from them in such an evil, sadistic way. It's incredible. Had that been the only loss your family had suffered, you would say that would be enough for 1,000,000 lifetimes. You have been hit by the evil depravity of Hamas again. Can you tell me what happened more recently?
Israel came under attack on the 7th of October 2023. I could spend literally the next 3 hours that you've allocated for this interview talking about what a shocking day that was in every respect. But by the time I got back home that day from the synagogue, it was both the Sabbath and also the last day of the Festival of Tabernacles, Sukkot as we call it in Hebrew. By the time I got home, my son-in-law and his wife, who was my daughter Percy, had been at our place, had shared with us that he, Naftali, our son-in-law, felt that his place was with his unit in the military. He hadn't been in the army for probably, I guess at that point, a decade. And by the time I came home, he'd already left. The next 2 months were bittersweet because we had our daughter and her 2 little girls, very little girls, 1.5 and 3 at the time, living with us because, we really thought for them that it would be good for them to be close with us, and it was. But then almost 2 months after he had started serving, and I'm sparing you all the details of what serving means, they decided they wanted to go home and be ready for when he came home. And then exactly 2 months after the war began, on the 7th of December, we had a knock on the door, and the worst possible news that anybody ever hears in this country was delivered, and we learned that he'd been killed in the fighting. And since then we've had to grapple with the feelings of why us, why him, why these beautiful little girls. And of course the questions are always a lot better than the answers, and we don't have answers, but there's nothing wrong with the questions. We want the world to be better. We want to win against these monsters. We don't see it as being a clash of two justifications. There's no justification for the kind of evil that they know how to visit on others. I'm talking about Hamas, the Islamists. And yes, it's a horrible thing to know that Malki's little sister is now a widow in her early 30s, and her 2 little sweethearts, who I spend time with every single morning after morning prayers, are their Abba, their daddy, isn't coming home. That's very hard to live with.
And you can tell me if this is too personal, but do they ask for him? How do little bubbas that age understand this sudden loss of the most important man in their life?
So first of all, I don't know how much you know about raising children, Erin, and having a little girl. Yeah. So the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, that's what they are now, just naturally stitch their Abba into the conversation a great deal, but in ways that are very touching, almost unbearable. Yesterday, as I was sitting with them, the littler one, who is very verbal and very cute, picked up a telephone. They have a thing for cell phones, real and toy, and she started chattering into the phone, and I said, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "Abba." And, for her, I think she really was talking to her father. They know that he's not coming back, or at least at some level they know, but being there as an adult in the room, watching this, understanding what that means for them, even if they don't understand that I was really not ever going to come home, it's very, very difficult. We haven't, of course, even begun to explain to them what the process is that takes little girls' Abba away from them, and there's plenty of time for that. But in every other respect, I have to tell you that, first of all, my daughter makes them very happy, and it's a very warm home. She's surrounded by two circles, her family, who are very, very engaged with her, and her friends, there's a long story to say about her friends as well, because she was sick, very sick for quite a long time, for years. And the same friends when she was just a middle teenager, the friends who are supporting her today. There's nothing easy about it, and it's not an unusual story, and unfortunately this country's been at war now for quite a long time. And the only good thing that you can say about it is we're at least all on the same side. The general sense of solidarity and support for what we're fighting for is pretty much wall to wall.
I can't imagine how hard that would be to watch. First of all, your kids lose their sister, and then to watch your daughter again lose her husband. And you're incredible. You people are incredible. I want to talk about the people involved in Malki's murder and the prospect of someone potentially facing up to the consequences of that evil. Where are we at when it comes to Jordan and the situation there? We know that the King of Jordan met with President Trump. What is the latest there that you have been told as the family of a victim of that evil terrorist act?
The key words in what you've just asked me are what you've been told. That's easy to answer, nothing. And that's been the case pretty much forever. The massacre that took place was the work of a committee. The head of the committee was a woman who was all of 21 years old and had pretty much the same job that you have, a TV personality. She actually read the evening news. I've got pictures of it. I've got a videotape of it on the day of the massacre. She, of course, didn't say in news from occupied Al-Quds, I blew up a pizzeria. She didn't say anything like that. But she was arrested only a couple of weeks after the massacre and then held for a long time. No one knew about it. We certainly didn't know about it. And then put on trial. We knew about that, but we weren't invited. And then convicted and then sentenced to 16 terms of life imprisonment. And then 10 years after the massacre, she was freed in order to release a hostage. That is a familiar theme now that Israel is grappling with at this very moment. The handing over of 1,027 convicted terrorists, more than half of whom were murderers, at the time was deeply embittering for us. So was the fact that no one
was that Gilad Shalit? Sorry, was that part of that?
Thank you. Yes. I know this story so well that I keep forgetting that not everybody knows what I'm talking about, but you obviously do. The Shalit deal was for one soldier. Israel gave 1,027 terrorists, including the woman who masterminded the attack on the pizzeria. But that wasn't, in certain ways, the worst. The worst was that she was the only one of the terrorists released who was a Jordanian, a real Jordanian. She was born in Jordan, educated there, the child of a soldier who'd spent his whole life in the Jordanian army. She went straight back, indirectly through Cairo, but straight back to Jordan, and immediately began a spectacular career as the presenter of her own weekly TV show that went all over Sydney and Melbourne and every place in the world where there are Arabic-speaking audiences for 5 years. 5 years of hammering away at, I did something that God wanted, God wants you to do it, the people who do this are good, give them your support. This woman, sitting in the safety of Amman, Jordan, for 5 years had this opportunity. And then things changed. The details are many and I'm skipping them. She's still there today. She's supported and protected and hidden. Well, she's not in hiding. She's hidden from American law enforcement by the Jordanian government. Why American? Malki was, of course, born in Australia and lived in Israel at the time that she was murdered. But in between, she was also an American. My wife is an American, and all of our children have American citizenship as well as the other the citizenships that they have. And I discovered that after the Shalit deal, the one where Israel handed over so many of these murderers, was done, I discovered that we had special rights that no one knew about, that no one was able to even explain to me. So this was one of the few times in my life that being a lawyer came in handy in a certain way. And to cut a long story short, several weeks after she began to live as a celebrity in Jordan, I got on a plane and went to Washington. And I went to the Department of Justice and I spoke to a full room of senior officials. And the result of all of that was that I walked out with the words ringing in my ears, we're going to do what we can do, but we won't be able to tell you until it's all done. And I came home and told my wife, we're in for a tough few weeks.
Yeah.
And it was 5 years before we heard a single thing. But when we heard about it, it was the Department of Justice and the FBI coming to meet with us here in Jerusalem and saying, in 3 hours from now, we're going to announce that charges that we got against her in 2013 and that have been secret all these years are going to be announced. And we have a request under the extradition treaty with Jordan, and we're going to get her. Well, she hasn't been gotten, and she's still in Jordan.
When was that, Arnold? When was that call, that visit from them in person to tell you that?
Right. Approximately the 14th of March, 2017. The announcement was made later that day, and exactly a week later, the Jordanian Court of Cassation, which is essentially the highest court in Jordan, handed down a ruling based on, I'm speaking with authority, on totally bogus premises, saying, well, the extradition treaty, which resulted from King Hussein signing with Bill Clinton, who was at the time the President of the United States, that agreement is invalid. So at this point, I generally sort of lean back, take off my glasses, which I'm not wearing, and say that this is all rubbish. The treaty is certainly valid. The fact that Jordan isn't handing over this woman has nothing to do with law. It has everything to do with politics and telling big stories to advance a political agenda. But from my point of view, and my wife, I speak for her on this issue, not on too many other issues in life, it's terribly important for us to see justice done. This woman isn't just free. The free we could live with, but she is the embodiment of a triumphalism that is based on dead Jewish children. In a literal sense, close to literal. She's been dancing on our daughter's grave all these years, and she wants other people to have their own graves of Jewish children to dance on, and that's unbearable.
Yep. I don't even know what to say because I can't relate on any level, but I understand immensely how you feel and why that is not an okay outcome in any way, shape or form, not just for your family, but the danger that she poses to others, given the ideology she has a very big platform to share. That's not okay on any level. What is the latest? What have you had any contact with the Trump administration? We're seeing lots of different movement in lots of different areas in Europe, in the Middle East, with hostages from America coming home. Have you had any discussions, and do you have any greater hope that you might see justice at some stage soon?
So 3 parts to my answer. No, haven't heard anything. No, we weren't really expecting to because it's been like this all along. And yes, full of hope that this is going to change very quickly. The truth is that with the announcement of the meeting at the White House between the King of America and the King of Jordan, which took place, God, I'm losing track, 2 days ago, the 11th of February, we thought that this would be the moment for the President of the United States to make the point that we really have to have this woman handed over because that's the way the treaty works. Well, nothing like that happened, and I can't tell you what's going to happen because it's a forward-looking statement and I don't really have any idea. I'm hoping that cooler heads and the people who have real respect for the American judicial system and the American system of justice will prevail, and the doublespeak and the cold silence that we've gotten from one after another US administration since 2013 will change. And if not, we'll just keep fighting anyway because we want to see justice done.
Well, I'll promise you this now, that I will join your fight, now that I know your story better, and now that we have met, I will join that fight. I will do what I can immediately to try and make sure that this gets the attention it deserves. I look at October 7, and that day was, I think, the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, only surpassed by the reaction of the world to it and the way that Israel and the Jewish people have been treated to it. And I look at your situation in that what you went through is unbearable, but the way you have then been treated by people like US administrations of past is unforgivable. and you don't deserve it. You deserve justice for your beautiful little girl and your entire family, and you deserve what will hopefully come very soon, which is the elimination of Hamas. Arnold, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I'm so grateful, and I'm a woman of my word. I promise you that, and I won't stop on this. So let's continue to catch up. Let's keep putting pressure on, and let's get justice for Malki.
Kol hakavod to you. Thank you, Erin. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.